Hello and welcome to Algebra 1, Adding and Subtracting Polynomials. In this video, we're going to add and subtract polynomials by combining like terms, and we're going to do that by understanding that there's always a number outside of the parentheses that is being distributed, and knowing when to drop the parentheses from an expression. These are some of the Florida's best standards that we're going to cover in this video, and let's go ahead and get started. So if you see an addition sign right before the parentheses, I want you to remember that there's a 1 there, okay? And if we're going to be distributing a 1, that doesn't really change what we have in the parentheses, right? And so when you see an addition sign, all we're really going to do, and remember there's an imaginary plus sign out here as well, so we can drop those parentheses, and so we have 2c squared plus 6c plus 4, and then we're going to just drop our second set of parentheses, so that 5c squared is going to remain positive, and then that 7 is going to remain negative. And then from here, we can go ahead and rearrange to get like terms together. If you really struggle with being able to just see that 2c squared plus 5c squared, if you struggle with that, just rearrange them. And so let's go ahead and get the c squareds together. Notice that I'm keeping the 5 squared positive. I want to make sure that I'm not changing the signs in front of the terms. And then I have plus 6c, and then I have plus 4 minus 7. Now, what I like to do, especially when I'm taking the EOC or a test, is I will just go back and count my number of terms to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could also go back and check them and make little check marks. So like 2c is here, and then 6c, and then 4, and so whatever kind of helps you keep track, because it's really easy to kind of forget a term, especially if it doesn't have a like term to go with it. And then from here, we're just going to combine like terms. So I'm going to do what the signs tell me to do. So I have 2 plus 5, and that gives me 7. And then the most important part of this is when we're adding and subtracting, you do not change the ending. So do not change what you have on the end. That's what made them like terms to begin with. If we start messing with the exponents, then they could become like terms with something else. So you just want to be careful. All right, and then 6c didn't have anything. And then we have a positive 4 minus 7. And so make sure that you are just popping this stuff into the calculator. When you go to take your EOC, you're going to be nervous and anxious, and you're going to want to do a whole bunch of mental math. Let the calculator do the work. So we have positive 4 minus 7, and that gives us negative 3. So don't be afraid to lean in on that calculator. And then from here, we want to just make sure that we check that it's in standard form. And we covered that in our last video when we talked about classifying polynomials. And so I want my highest degree to be first, so my highest exponent is that 2, and then I want it in descending order. This one would have an exponent of 1, and then this has an exponent of 0 because there is no c on it. So make sure you're writing your answer in standard form. When I rearrange my like terms, to get like terms next to each other, I automatically start putting it into standard form. And that kind of just helps me already do that by the time I get to the end. All right, let's do another example. Let's try an example that has fractions. A lot of people will see a problem like this and they just automatically skip it. So we know that there's an imaginary plus out here, and then this would be the same as distributing that 1. And so for this problem, we can just drop the parentheses. So now I have negative 22 over 4 xy plus 3x squared minus 5y. Make that 2 a little clearer. And then that 4x squared is going to remain positive, minus 2y plus 7 over 2 xy. Now I'm going to rearrange and get these like terms together. So I'm going to start out with the x squared. Now I know that this would be a degree of 2 and this would be a degree of 2, but we also kind of want to think about alphabetical order. So like an x by itself is going to come before an x and a y typically. So we're going to usually see it as my x squareds going first. So I have 3x squared, and then I can put my little check mark over it so I can remember that I wrote it, and then plus 4x squared, and then I don't have any more x squareds, and then I have negative 22, and notice that I'm keeping it negative, over 4xy, and then plus 7 over 2 xy, and then we have our y's at the end. So that's going to be minus 5y and minus 2y. And notice that now all of my terms have a check mark over them, and that's how I can kind of keep track of what I did and didn't do. So now I have what I wrote in green, and a lot of people would just skip this problem because they see fractions, they see a lot of pluses and minuses, they see parentheses, and they get super intimidated and they just skip the question or guess. And so I know how to add and subtract with fractions. We can use our calculator for that. So I'm going to use my calculator, and we have parentheses 22 divided by 4, and then we're going to change it to a negative, close those parentheses, plus parentheses 7 divided by 2, close our parentheses, and then press equals, and that gives us a negative 2. And it's that easy. So don't let those problems intimidate you. Negative 22 over 4 plus 7 over 2 is negative 2, and then we're going to keep our ending. And then I have negative 5 minus 2, negative 5 minus 2, and that gives me negative 7. So lean in on your calculator. I can't emphasize that enough. All right, here we go. If there's a negative sign right before the parentheses, so we're going to kind of imagine that there's a negative 1 here. If I were to distribute that negative 1, then that means that the signs are just changing. So negative 1 times positive 2 is now negative 2, and negative 1 times positive 5 is now negative 5. Now remember, this one still has that imaginary plus out front, and so we're just going to rewrite the front one. That one's not changing at all. And then if we're just looking at what's in the parentheses, so if we're just looking at this, instead of distributing and writing our rainbows and all that stuff, we're just going to change the signs of what's on the inside. So that positive 2d is now going to be negative 2d. That positive 5 is now going to be negative 5. And then from here, I can go ahead and rearrange and get my like terms together. So I have d squared, that one is taken care of. Then I have minus d minus 2d. And then I have plus 5 minus 5. Now, I need to remember that there's a 1 in front of the d there, and that's going to help me with doing my math. D squared is just going to stay the same. It's not going to go anywhere. Then I have negative 1 minus 2, and that's going to give me negative 3d. And then plus 5, or positive 5, minus 5 is just 0. So when I see opposite signs like that, I can just cross them out, and I know that that would be plus 0. Now I don't need to write plus 0. I'm just going to write this, okay? And then I'm going to check to see if it's in standard form, and it is. All right, let's go ahead and try this last problem. Of course, we had to do more fractions. And so same thing with this one. There's an invisible plus sign out here, so I'm just going to rewrite the first one. And then I see a minus sign right before my parentheses, so now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to change the signs of those. I don't even look at that minus sign at the end. I don't put it on my paper. I'm exclusively looking at that 7 and I'm thinking, okay, is that 7 now going to be a positive or a negative? And so that's a positive 7. So I'm just going to put minus 7. Notice that I didn't just put that minus down here. So you have to be careful. I'm looking strictly at the 7. It's positive, and now I'm changing the sign, so it's going to be negative 7. Then I have a negative 13 over 2, so that's going to be positive 13 over 2 x squared. And so from there, I'm just going to do that same process that I've been doing. So I see that my highest degree is a 2, so I'm going to write those first. That way my answer is already in standard form. So I have 18 over 4 x squared plus 13 over 2 x squared, and then plus 2x. Notice that 2x is positive, and then I have that minus 7 at the end. And then I can just count my terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that kind of tells me, okay, I didn't forget anything. Just be careful with these fractions. Leave it to the calculator. Notice that these two do not have the same denominator. Now we could do this by hand, multiply the 13 and the 2 by 2, get like denominator. There's no reason to do all of that on your EOC when you get to have a calculator. So let the calculator do the work. So I'm going to clear out my calculator. Parentheses, 18 divided by 4. Close parentheses, plus, open parentheses, 13 divided by 2, close parentheses, equals. Don't forget to hit that equals at the end, because if you don't, it's going to just show you what 13 divided by 2 is. So make sure you hit the equal sign at the end. Anytime I put fractions in the calculator, I put them in parentheses, especially when I'm adding and subtracting. Or even when I'm multiplying and dividing, it really doesn't matter. I always put them in parentheses to make sure that I'm helping my calculator do the correct order of operations. So now from here, I've got 11. And so now that's 11, and then I keep the ending the same, and then I didn't have any like terms with these, and so I'm just going to tack them on to the end, and my answer is already in standard form and ready to go. So adding and subtracting polynomials, easy when you know what to do, easy when you have a calculator. And that concludes our video.